How did you solve all the exercises? Or have you started? Didn't didn't have time. I'm just messing with you. um. Well, I guess we'll start. 'Cause, if you're in time, that's what's important. Um. How is the exercises going for you that have started? Are they too hard? Too easy? Just right? Impossible to understand? Um, anything? Huh?
But when I read the requirement for the access, I kind of sometimes I cannot understand what's the requirement for the some point that you need to add some IRI table in the template, but somewhere down is you should add some run something in the UL. But yeah, these two didn't match. I mean, for the
Hmm?
access one.
Hi.
For example, yeah, you should have a LI with a class instance item, but here you say inside of the UL. So
Exactly. So
the
the LIs are placed inside.
under the UL.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Um. No other spontaneous questions about the exercises?
Is this being recorded via Skype? Maybe you got an email.
I upload them to YouTube.
Okay, yeah.
Um, I sent them out on Outlook.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I was asking for. I don't remember her name now, but she couldn't.
Rashmi.
Yes.
Yeah. Alright. So, today.
Last time we had a problem with this input-output. I don't know if you can do it.
Input output?
Yeah.
What was
To
the problem?
input from the parents or to output some other component.
I'm not sure of your question. We have
I think he's referring to the access one. There's some yeah. If you pass in something
from a child to a parent.
Yeah.
Okay. After the session, we could take a look at
Yeah,
it.
sure.
I decided to have a little bit shorter like presentations and to leave some space for questions and stuff. Today we're gonna talk about asynchronicity in front-end developing and Angular. And this is the agenda for today. We have async, observables, reactive programming, subjects, error handling, and HTTP. And then I will create a type ahead like example, type ahead component for like where we could use a little bit more advanced stuff. So just for an example. So async programming. What is async programming? The flow of like when we connect to a backend or when we try to get data from a backend, the data will be like it's not instantaneous. Like the data will be received in some time. Depending on your internet connection, whatever. Like, stuff takes time, and we don't want to stop our front end application while waiting for a response from the backend. We want to, sure, we could freeze the entire the window while we're getting data, but this isn't a great user experience, and that's why we have async programming. And sure, so there's some problems with async programming. It could be a bit tricky because in normal synchronous programming, it's well structured. You always have the data when you need it, or if you set up your code right, you will. But async programming, we will have cases where we haven't got the data yet, and we need methods to handle this in the front end. And a couple common ways to do this are callbacks. So we maybe pass a callback to a function, and when you get a response, you call a new function which does something new. People talk about callbacks they're very hard to maintain, and they could be very confusing, because I guess you've heard about something called callback hell, where you have a callback and then you pass in another callback to your callback, and you just keep chaining callbacks, and suddenly you don't know what these callbacks do. So this obviously isn't a great way of handling asynchronous. This is a very hard word. Async. So then we figured out a cool, smart way to make async easier, and that is with promises. Promises is I guess it's an object, or it's a type. A promise is a type, and they return either a response or a reject. So either you get the data or you couldn't get the data. These are the two options. And using these promises, you could call then or catch. So then would be when you have gotten your data, and catch would be if you get an error. Promises are great, and they have really helped front-end developing a lot. But there's still some issues with them. And then we figured out async await. So we could stop we could make the code act like synchronous code. Async await is very commonly used in React, from what I know, and it's a great way of handling asynchronicity. I personally don't like it, but I don't know that much about it, so but basically what async await is, you have a function. You say that this is a asynchronous function, and in it you await different methods, and before you have gotten a response back on the awaited methods, the asynchronous function will not finish. This is basically what I understand of it. But none of this is how we do it in Angular. In Angular, this is synchronous code and asynchronous code. So here we have a chain of events, whilst here stuff happens independently of each other. And this is what I mean. So if number 4 here is reliant on something that happened in number 1, it works fine in synchronous code, but in asynchronous code it won't work, because 4 starts loading at the same time as 1. So we need to figure this out. And in Angular we use something called reactive programming, which would be RxJS, and it's a asynchronous programming paradigm. We have data streams of we have data streams so that we could observe, and we could look for change on these streams and react to the new values of these streams. Streams are immutable, and they work very well for handling highly interactive UI. So Angular has a lot of like events. We have a lot of stuff that happens in the background. We have HTTP requests. We have store. We have forms. All that we want to use. Like there's a lot of things happening, and we want to have all these events in a stream. And RxJS is a framework, I guess, or a library. Yeah, it's a library for JavaScript that Angular builds up upon. But you can use RxJS for any front-end application, really. I will show more of what RxJS is. So in reactive programming, I was talking about the streams. We have different kind of streams. So we have hot streams and cold streams. Cold stream have like it's not moving until you start observing it. So a hot stream would be like you always have values happening, and when you start looking at it, you get the latest values. If you have a cold stream, you start looking at it, and all values start happening. I don't have a clear example of when we have a hot stream or when we have a cold stream. Or in NGRX state handling in Angular, we have to call like effects. We have a stream of actions that's happening in the application, and though that stream is going from the application start, so it would be a hot stream. And then when we want to hook into it and call something new, maybe an HTTP request, then we would create a cold stream to the backend and get our new data. Reactive programming is very powerful. It's really quite impressive what you can do with it, but it could also be. I would say this is the hardest thing I've learned in programming. Like it's a completely new way of thinking, and like maybe when you start looking at it, it could be a bit confusing. But I'm guessing like Java have streams as well, right?
Yeah, like if you mean is it like threads?
I think there's Eric's Java, so you can have reactive programming in Java.
Okay, but I'm not sure about Eric's Java.
Oh yeah.
But I've so I work with new kind of stuff. Libraries and all of those frameworks.
All right, Saab. Let's look at some things. So we have in reactive programming we have something called observables, and these build out on the concept of promises. We have so a promise will evaluate to either like here's your value or there's no value here, or there's an error, and observables work in a similarly, but you have way more functionality on observable. We can handle multiple values in a stream. So once again, in a promise, you get like here's your value, but in with an observable, you can get a value, and then a little bit later you can get another value and another value, and you keep as long as you're subscribing to observable, so you're subscribing to changes, you get notified of these changes on the observable. And we could use observables to handle both synchronous like events and asynchronous events. So we can start things with them, and it, yeah. They're cancelable. So a promise, you start a promise and you say, I want this data, but when you have started, there's no way for you to stop it. It will either go through or it will fail. Observables, if you change your mind, you can cancel the request, and or you could, like, maybe you're trying to start a request on every keystroke, like, so every keystroke, then you would poll your backend a lot, but you could, with an observable, like, debounce it, so when you stop writing, then you will start searching. Observables are, you can also replay and retry them in case your, like, HTTP request fails. I will show an example of that. And basically, what an observable is a construct to which you subscribe to be notified of changes of data. And this is kind of how the comparison between a promise and an observable is. So here, a promise, we have then a fail or a success where we get data. And whilst the observable is like a highway, there's a lot of things that we could do using this observable, and it's really cool. Let's look at some observables, I guess. Or wait, we have reactivity and Angular. So Angular is built on observables, like the events that happen. We could observe these. HTTP requests. They're all, everything is built on observables there. Forms, we have template-driven forms and we have reactive forms. Reactive forms obviously are built upon RxJS, so we could be notified of changes in the form, and we could, like, subscribe to state changes of the form and that. In the last time, we subscribed to params in the router, if you remember, to get the ID, and that is because it's an observable. The param is an observable, which changes and gets new values, and to get those values we need to subscribe to. But let's look at some stuff. Let's see, I prepared some things. So in the examples folder, let's create a new directory. So let's call it let's call this RxJS example. Oh, it's fine because it's default too. So here are RxJS examples, and let's just look at some.
When you give this command for generating components, does it matter which where you are in?
It could matter. So it will.
I mean, if you want, for example.
So you see here, it's an updated app module, but it knows that because that would be the closest module from my path. But if I had more modules as like, if my location was in another directory that was closest to that module, it would add it to that module. And
That's why you had the dash project.
yes, yes. And also right now, since I'm at the root of this project, it will always default to examples because it will be the first application here. But if I change directory to stand like in example expenses, then I'm not sure. I think you'll be fine. Yep. So in the ArcGIS examples, let's look at a quick stream. So let's run. So this is not really an interval, but using of, we could create an observable of this array. So when we right now, if we try to call console log this interval, this will not show us the array of values, but it will show us the observable. Let's.
I don't really understand. We create an observable of this array.
So it's a new object. The observables that I talked about. So right now we have a stream of this. We create a stream of this array, and it will. I'm not sure how to explain.
It's on the console. You see the object, not the value. Right?
Exactly.
You see of 1, 2, 3, or something like that.
Let's look at what we get. So first, in the app component here, we need to let's comment these things out, and let's look at app ArcGIS examples. And here ng serve. So right now we won't get anything rendered because we will get ArcGIS examples work. This is some old stuff. Probably something that's not bug. Or let's do this instead, I guess. Okay. So generally in Angular, it's not that often that you would create your own observables. Mostly you work with the HTTP observables, or you work with the router observables, or the form observables. There's some use cases, of course, from doing this. The of that I'm using here would mostly be I mostly use this if I have a stream, I get the value, I want to return the value that I got as a new stream, for example. And why is I'm not sure why this isn't starting. Worrying.
has two states, right? In the fail or success, but the observer should have multiple.
Well, like it doesn't have to be, but uh, so the observables they keep on running, and they can receive new values. Whilst if when a promise gets its value, then that's the end of that promise. So here we logged the value, and we see an observable. So we don't know about the value in this observable. To get the value out, we would have to do something like this. Dot subscribe. And here we get the value and console log the value. And now we get an array of so we get the array like all at once, so because right now we're telling it to just return this data from this observable. I'm guessing I'm not being super clear here. I have a hard time explaining where.
If you put up the console log as a normal array, is there a difference between those or
Right now, no. They look the same. However, so it's hard to demonstrate this with data that isn't asynchronous right now. But I think there's something called. Wait. I think there's actually a thing in ArcGIS called interval. Yes. Okay, so it went real fast. We want to put something here, like this. Okay, so now we have an interval that takes up every 1 second, and but you see, here we have an actual stream. So
is that a hot stream or a cold stream?
this would be a cold stream because it started at 0, and we could demonstrate that by let's call something like set timeout. And wait, so now it should subscribe after 3 seconds. If I
And what's the console log?
right, of course, that helps. So this is a shorthand for. So what I did first, I wrote val, and then I wrote console log val. A shorthand for that would be to just write console log. This is a RxJS. This is exclusive to RxJS. So if you call subscribe like console log like this in the subscribe, it will automatically console log it. So you don't have to get the value and then console log the value.
Can you do other stuff directly in the subscribe as well? I don't know.
Like this?
Yes. Is it
Not that I know of. But I'm not
just
sure.
for debugging is short?
Yeah. So you see now it's not starting and then it starts, but it starts at 0. So it's a cold stream. Oops. So that's the basics of how an interval, how an observable works. But of course we might want to do something to this interval. Let's comment that one out and instead call interval. So subscribe, you will. That's how you start observe. How you start looking at the values received from the stream. Um, However, to manipulate the stream before you get it, this is very common. You know you get some kind of data, but you want to like massage the data into something you actually want to use. And to do that, we have to add something called pipe. This is RxJS syntax, and inside pipe they have a bunch of we have a lot of operators that we could call. The operators, there's a lot of operators. I can show you. Learn RxJS. So this is RxJS documentation, and they have cleaned this up a lot. But there's a bunch of different operators, and we will not go into them in any detail. Really, this will. I look at this a lot because there's no way to remember every single operator that RxJS has, because they're very like they usually have very specific cases. But the most uh, common operator that we use is map, and this is not the same as a normal map in JavaScript. This is a RxJS map. Let's import this from operators, like so, and here we get the value, and then we want to. So what we return here would be what is then passed along to the subscription. So maybe we want to take our values and double them. So if we pass val times 2 here, all our emits will, if I console log. So now we get 0, 2, 4, and so on. So using map, we can manipulate the data in our stream before we show it. Is this sort of clear how this works? Map is not really looping over them because you get a value at a time, but it does something on every value. So yeah, we don't have an array of values here. We have a stream of values, which are a bit, sure, they're similar, but not really the same. Like the interval, or so yes. So like when you get the data from a backend, maybe. So say you get a user, and you get the entire user object, but you only want the user name or the user, like the user's social security number. Then you would. There's other operators. There's one called maybe filter, and then you could get the data and you could filter the data based on some criteria and return that. And so this is different. So right now, as you see, this stream, I did something here. This stream just keeps on going. Angular streams, they all complete. I will Oh yeah, I had a thing here. So observables, they have three different like methods that they call. They have next, error, and complete. And next is what's happening here. We get pushed a new value using next. So using next, we can push a new value to the subscriber. Error would be like you could call something when the stream errors out, and complete you could call something when the stream completes. When the stream completes, it ends. So we could. So let's look. Yes. So using. So maybe in this case, maybe we just want this interval to exist while this component is rendered to the screen. Then we could. So here we would set up something like this. And this dot subscription is equal to that. And then when ng destroy happens, we would call this dot subscription dot unsubscribe. So this will end the stream that we were looking at. And it's good that you asked this, because this is extremely important to do. Because if you don't unsubscribe to your streams, they will just keep on going, and they will they will hog like data, not data, they will hog performance, and they will, in this case, if this component, if you have multiple of these components and you render them dynamically without cleaning up the subscription, you get more and more and more subscriptions, which eventually could end up in like data leaks, and
Duplicates of the same subscription as well.
you get a new identical subscription.
Two are running simultaneously. So
Yeah, they're running parallel. And also, if you don't so if there's a subscription going in a component, if you don't clean up that subscription, Angular also can't clean up the component. So then the component will be there in the memory. Of course, it won't be rendered to the screen, but this can also cause some problems. So always unsubscribe to your subscriptions. There's multiple ways of doing this as well. We have a couple of different. But first, right now we have a we have a stream of values, but let's look at how an observable works, like behind the scenes, kind of. This is also something that you will never really do in an application. I personally haven't had a case where I have to create my own like observer methods, but there's probably some case. So let's call this sequence. And then we could and then we have sequence. Okay, so So this is kind of how. Wait, one last thing. We also need to have this. That's. Oh, excellent. So this is kind of how observable looks behind the scenes or a subscription, and here we to get these values now sequence is observable, and then we would subscribe to this, and let's call console log again. So now we should get apple first, and then we get banana logged to console, like so. Once again, you don't. I personally say you don't really need to know this. Is for sake of showing complete how this works. So now we have observer next apple and observer next banana, and let's call observer dot complete here, and then let's call observer next again, orange. So what would you expect happens here? Are emitted, yeah, and that is exactly what happens, because now the observer here gets the two values, apple and banana, and then the observable completes, and then the subscription. So this is a subscription you don't need to clean up, because this is a most observables will, like all the observables that Angular provides will almost all will come with a complete method called like this, and when you have a completed observable, you don't need to clean that up. This also happens if this errors out. So if we have observer.error, then we also get apple and banana, and then it calls error that no original error. Okay, so it's just something ArcGIS showed up, and as you can see, orange or not is not emitted from this observable either. So this is very, like, as I said, you mostly need to understand like this concept, like here how we have a stream of values that come in at a given time, and that we can manipulate that stream. We could change that stream, trying to, like, we would be here a long time if we would go through all of ArcGIS, but this is like the core part of what ArcGIS is. You have an observable, and you subscribe to that observable to get the values out from that stream. This will be more clear when we actually have some real life, like when we look at HTTP, which we will after.
Pipe map when you do HTTP requests?
You don't. I mean, you never have to pipe. You don't. You never have to pipe map, but you can if you want to. So
Only subscribe, and then you have the value.
yes, exactly. This
Stops because it's just a request.
in HTTP they complete. So you get a value from your request, and then it completes. Yes. There are some cases where, like maybe you have a WebSocket, then obviously you will get more than one value from your from your request. and then it won't complete. So let's go back to the presentation. I realized it, like, observables is a bit, it's both, like, it's hard to explain and it's kind of hard to understand. But let's, any questions right now? Or it will get more clear when we start doing HTTP requests. So the next part of RxJS that is, this is way more relevant for us, is subjects. And so the observables we didn't really have control of. It's just a stream of values. The subjects are observables that we have full control of. So we it's both, like, it's both an observable and an observer. So we can call next on a subject and pass new values to the stream, and we could end, like, call complete on the subject to end the stream. But we have full control of this observable, and there's 3 variations of the subject. The subject, normal subject, would be just like an manual observable. The second one is a behavior subject. So the behavior subject holds an internal value, so the current value, and then you could pass new values to it. Behavior subject is how you would do state handling in Angular without like a store or Redux. Actually, like NGRX, the state handling library that we will look at in session 5, builds out upon behavior subjects. And lastly, we have a thing called replace subject, and replace subject holds, like, you could specify how many past values it will hold. So say you want to keep 5 values in your replace subject, then when you start observing it, it will emit all those 5 values initially, and then, like, in a succession, and then it acts like a normal observable. Let's look at the subjects. So in our RxJS examples component, let's comment this out and comment that out. Maybe I'll create a new file actually instead. RxJS.
It stands for subject.
No, it stands for service.
Service.
Yes. RxJS examples. So I'm creating a service here right now, which would be like a state managing service, which you also will create in the next exercise, if I remember correctly. Okay, so now we create a service. I just placed it in the same directory for now. And let's inject this service here. Private. Like so. And then in our service we could call we set up a state, we could call it new subject. And then in our ArcJS examples, let's add a button here. Let's say emit instead. And then in our component, we add this method emit new, and let's do like this. So this dot service dot state dot next, like so, and let's also on init here call this dot service dot state dot subscribe. So initially initially nothing will happen with this subject, because we haven't, like, it has no initial value. We just want to manually control this subject, and let's see here. So as you can see in the console, there's nothing, but when we click here, we get new emits. They just keep adding on. This is a lot more useful than the previous, than the normal observables for our use cases, or my use cases generally. Let's also look at the behavior subject. So in our service, and the behavior subject has, as you see right now, it's red because it expects an argument, and that would be the initial value. And then let's also in our example ArcJS examples add like log current, and call this dot service dot state dot current value. Let's see. And here we call this dot service dot state dot behavior dot subscribe. And let's comment that out. So now we get the initial value from our subject, and then when we Right, I should add a button for this as well. So now we have something, and we
Don't have a function.
Hmm?
Don't have a function. Not here.
yes, I do.
Okay. So
Oh, but I don't have a console log. Like so. Okay. And now we get something here. We click log value. We get something. So we have an we have a concept of current value, current state of this subject. When we click new emit here, and then we click log value, you see the value has changed of this subject. And doing this, we could track. So say in your expenses project, you have an array of items, and you want to subscribe to that array of items, but you also want it to be a subject, so you could, when you add a new item, like call next on the subject and emit a new value to the subscribers. So then say you have 2 items and you generate 1 expense for every item in that array. When you press add new item, then you want to push out the new array for the subscribers. And a way to get this value to our template. So right now we're just like console logging the value, which isn't very intriguing, I guess. So what we can do here is so either we can set a we could have an observable here that's just, or variable here that's just a reference to the observable in the service. So this dot service, let's call this behavior. So now we have a reference to that subject. In Angular, or when you work with streams and observables, what do you say, pattern is that you write a $sign. So now you know, so to indicate that this is a stream. And so to get this value, we could maybe we could do like this. So we have a current val like so, and then on init we would call this dot var and then subscribe. We get the val and the current, this dot current val is equal to value. So this is one way where we could set a value using our stream. And if we show it like this, oops, so current val right now is something, and when we click here we get the new value and it updates like this. But this is a lot of code to just get that value from a stream. What you instead should and would do, we talked very quickly about pipes, and I said that pipes generally aren't very useful. They have a very limited use case, but there's one pipe that's extremely useful, and it's called the async pipe. And what the async pipe does is you you write it in the template. You reference observable in the template, and then you pipe async, and then it will get the value of that observable. So um, we can use our var $sign here, and instead of writing current val here, we write var $sign pipe async, and we get the same result. And as you see, we don't have a subscription in our file in our class, and it's way less code to do the same thing and same functionality. What's also really nice with this async pipe is that when this component destroys, we don't have to clean this up, because async pipe will clean up the observable for you. So this basically starts a subscription immediately. We can also, this is more of a general service thing. So here I wrote private service, and then obviously we cannot reference our service here. Like, I can't write service. However, if I write if I set this to a public service, we can write service dot behavior async. So then we could save even more code and also get the same behavior. But the public and private thing, that's not limited to ArcGIS. It's more a general thing I should have brought up when we talked about services and injection. Let's also take a quick look at the replay subject. So, of the subjects, behavior subjects, for me, is by far the most useful, because you can you can update your template based on this this observable. You remember I had a little problem when I was going to show you in the first session, I think, or second session, where we talked about services. I was going to show you where I had an array, and then I pushed something to that array, and I wanted to get the value. I didn't want to mutate the array, but I had to, because otherwise it wouldn't recompile. Here we don't mutate the array. We push a new value to the subject, and that subject happens to be like a new array. But let's look quickly at the replay subject as well.
Break or after?
After replay. And this is also any.
Is the type of the
Exactly. So if we would say that this would be a string, then the replay subject would only, or TypeScript will say that, hey, you can only emit strings from this. And so here the replay subject takes one parameter called the buffer size, and let's set buffer size to 3. And let's, in the constructor of this service, call this dot replay next 3 times. So here's the, you see, since I type this as a string, and when I pass a number, it says that it's not assignable. So this is the like TypeScript nice things to have. This will work still, but depending on how strict your like linting rules and then this may prevent like a build or something. And always make sure to, so you really shouldn't be using any if you really know, like if you know what type of data you're getting, then you should work with that data. This is true for all strongly typed languages, but in the cases of like subjects and observables, like they can handle any kind of data. So you can emit a string, and then you can emit a number, then you can emit a function, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'm not sure if you can emit a function, but maybe. But let's say a string here, and let's call first and second and last. So right now we haven't subscribed to replay yet, but let's do that in our examples component, and on init of this, let's comment that one out and call this service.replay.subscribe. So what do you expect will happen here? Yes, exactly. We will get first, second, and third, and that's just because we have like a buffer of things. But if we would call, so now if we call this dot replay dot next and call fourth, so now we only get second, third, fourth, because it doesn't keep exactly. It knows that these items will be emitted in a sequence, but it doesn't care about the first in this case.
It's always the first.
Yes. So it's like, what was I say? First in, first out. Yeah. Questions about replay subject? No. All right. So yeah.
Always need a state.
You always need an initial value,
Always.
but the initial value could be
So if you don't
like-
have an initial value, you use subject.
yes. And also, so you use a subject if you're not interested in the current value. You just want the stream of values. The behavior subject is you want a stream of values, but you also want to know which was the latest emitted value, which would be the current value. And the replay subject, I have personally never used the replay subject in an application, but I'm sure there's some cases where you maybe you want to cache like these amounts of items, and then you would show the latest 15 items or something like that. But yeah, I think there's something for us to eat outside, so let's get some air in here as well.
Looks like green.
Smakar ju lite kemiskt också som alla andra energidrycker. Jag vet inte om vi är från där är sockerfri, va? Är det så stevia eller?
Ja, stevia, precis. Stevia. Mag varje gång däremot på.
Ja, det bubblar.
Ice cream. Is it? What is it? Is it cold? Yeah. Huh.
It's like ice cream. Oh, this looks nice.
det där ens?
Det smakar som smält glass.
Det är så? Nice.
Det var väldigt gott.
Okej, du menar att man ska ha det där till?
Ja, jag antar
Alltså,
det.
I am so confused right now.
Both confused by this.
I'm confused by everything.
So I understand if this is a bit confusing, but it will get more. Like the more you use it,
Yeah,
the more you will understand.
that's
And
usually the case.
Yeah.
And I mean, YouTube videos are always there available too.
yes.
Instagramvänligt också.
Det här var den bästa. Det vi redan.
Det här var lite kul faktiskt.
Ja, alltså mackor och croissants det är inte så kul. Man behöver lite socker så här på eftermiddagen.
Så om du blir uppspeedad nu så vet du varför.
Förstår ni lite grann eller?
Sista... jag förstår. Ja. Jag tycker att det är rätt svårt att tro på. Jag är inte jättehaj på JavaScript överhuvudtaget.
Nej.
Man förstår sen när man typ hämtar och...
Ja,
Så det är mest syntaxen som jag försöker...
ja det är också. Men det är också om man måste hitta på som du säger, lite bra exempel man kan använda den här tiden. Just nu är det bara kanske det där med...
Så det här alltså det är svårt. Det här är och det är så här som det är jättesvårt att hitta use cases. Men när man måste fatta typ how the streams work och då kan man se typ så här alla patterns som man kan göra med det här. Men alltså framförallt typ så här Anglers infrastruktur bygger på observables och när jag började med Angular så kände jag det här var det som verkligen fick mig typ så här varför för det känns typ så här onödigt svårt för vad man vill göra. Men när man väl är inne i det så blir det lite roligare.
Du tycker inte det är svårt nu eller?
Ja, jag tycker det är svårt att förklara så jag tycker det är svårt. Men när jag just nu så ser jag typ bara när jag använder så ser jag bara fördelar med att använda det. Men det är det här tröskeln för att komma in som är svår.
Men hur länge har du kört Angular nu?
Sen oktober 2018. Så inte så länge. Men ja, innan det så jag är ganska ny som utvecklare. Jag har ju jobbat sedan november 2018. Och innan det pluggade jag. Eller ja, då började min lia. Så sen maj har jag fått betalt. Men jag har jobbat för Kronofogden.
Har du kört en lia på Kronofogden?
Ja. Som fick ut mig på uppdrag. Men jag ursprungligen så redan React-utvecklare. Men nu, jag har inte suttit med någon React på sjukt länge nu. Så nu har jag ingen aning. Det är mycket som har hänt i React de nästa 2 åren. Du kanske ska prata om något React?
Ja, alltså det enda jag hoppas är att vi kommer använda det här bara vi sitter i React nu, men jag hoppas att vi får köra lite Angular så man får, annars kommer man ju tappa
Så när jag satt här på bänken så ni hade en jättebra chans.
Ja, just det.
Ja.
Men det är, alltså grejen i Kronofogden, vi har behövt leverera så mycket så vi har inte hunnit så här liksom.
Men
in i Angular så här.
Men när jag satt här och fanns tillgänglig i en månad så hade du lätt kunnat komma igång med Angler.
Jo, det är sant. Next time.
Fan, jag är helt såld på det här. Det här var...
Som smoothie.
Jag tror den där frön. Ja, jäkligt alltså.
Men det är bara som en present. Eller? Ja, det var frukt.
Forskare varnar för hälsobäret Expressen 2016.
Ja, precis. När man käkat det.
Du skulle rätt färskt sen.
Vad varnas de?
Blålila bär som växer på akaicieropalmer i Amazonas djungler. De flyr skogen då? Nej. Eftersom bären växer så är det vanligt att man köper bär i pulver eller kapsulform. Anledningen till att det är svåruttaget bär och blir populärt är att det är otroligt näringsrikt. Så näringsrikt att det till och med räknas som superfood. Superfood är livsmedel som anses vara extra hälsosamma och som har speciellt högt näringsinnehåll. Det har gått också ursprungligen. Bra i såna här corona-tider. Lite superfood.
Och så har de lock på sig också. Så.
Verkar mycket gott.
Är det någon som vill ha servett?
Det är bra, jag tror. Hur kallt det var?
Ja, det var det.
Refreshing.
What is that?
We don't have any concept of state
Akai fruit.
props in Angular, right?
What?
Something like yogurt.
Concept of
It's
state.
It was a
what?
superfood.
No.
It's Superman.
So
Highly nutritious.
this is like the
berry.
closest we
Purple
come,
berry.
I guess,
Ja, okej.
From the
to a state
palms
with
of
the behavior
Amazonas.
subject.
Called acai something.
Okay. The methods that we, or the properties that we put up here, like
I don't know what defines superfood, but it's highly nutritious.
like
It's good. It tastes good.
the state of this class is that it has this prop, but like besides that, there's not really a state. So my presentation is looking weird because I had a whole part about HTTP. Oh, here. Oh, my bad. It's there. So let's move this. how a subject like acts, and how an observable acts. Here we have a passive observer, and we get like we subscribe to it and we get values emitted. Here we have a subject and it's active, and we can trigger it using next and complete and error. We have full control of it. This is what I said before. We should unsubscribe to our methods, either using the async or the subscription, or like the unsubscribe or the take until. So I'll show it to you. Initially I was going to let you Google like a take until variant, and how you would use take until. It's not really an operator, but it also comes from RxJS, and so here we have a subscribe to var, and here we have a subscribe to replay and a subscribe. This is a subscription. So here we have two subscriptions, and so if we would set up a property called like replay subscription, and then on destroy unsubscribe it, like if we have say 5 subscriptions in our file, it would be a lot of extra templating just to unsubscribe from these methods. And what we want to do then is you don't like, this is a pattern that I learned like a couple of months ago, and not really, like a year ago. And what we would do is we set up like a private property, destroy, which is a new subject, and then on destroy we would call this dot on destroy dot next, and then this dot on destroy dot complete. So to unsubscribe now from our different methods, we could add pipe take until, and then this dot on destroy. So what this does, so what this does, what the take until does, is when this observable emits a new value, we should unsubscribe to this, or like we should stop this subscription. And here we have a stream of our subject, and on destroy we emit a new value, and then we end this subscription, and that will also end all our other subscriptions. This isn't really something you need, like this is just a fun thing, or not a fun thing, it'll help you save some code, because a lot of people, like, their issue with Angular is that there's a lot of, it's very like wordy, like you need to write a lot of code to sometimes do very little, and this, like, so my recommendation is that you take every chance you get to save some code, because no one likes your, like, the files to be 800 lines of code. Like, no one will be able to read this. So really try to like min-max as much as you can to improve like collaboration and stuff. Like, sure, your code might be very clear for you, but will probably not be for someone just getting into what you have done. But let's look at HTTP. I'm sure all of you know what HTTP is, but I will go through it very quickly. So this is the structure of an HTTP request. We have a HTTP verb, which would be post, get, put, delete. We have an endpoint where we want to post, put, get, or delete something. We can pass headers, so maybe we need to pass like a authorization token, or maybe we need to pass what, like in a post, what type of data are we posting to the backend. And then for the case of post, put, and patch, we also need to send a body with the request to, like, so if you want to add something to the backend, you obviously need to send the data you're going to add. So we will, like, in your in the examples application or project, we will have a full CRUD app, which would be create, post, and read, get, update, put, and delete. This is, I guess, like the normal patterns for like front end to back end connection. Let's look at how we do HTTP in Angular. No questions about HTTP, right? It's pretty logical. So what I did, I collected all my backend skills, which is none, and then I wrote a backend in the Nest, which is a Node framework. It's let's look at it. So here we have an examples API, and basically it's just a server, but it's just a service, but I'm running it through Node. So it, like, we can make actual HTTP requests to our local host. I had initially I made a way better backend, and I had I had a Postgres database, and I had put it on AWS, and but I did this like in December, and then I started getting bills from AWS because it was just there. I thought as long as I don't do any reads and writes, it would be fine. And then I realized you guys would probably want to do a lot of reads and writes to test your code, and I can't afford it. Yes, I should have done that, but I forgot, and yeah. Anyways, so now we're stuck with my beautiful API without a database. And we have some methods on it. It's a to-do, so we get our to-do list, and we can get all our to-dos, or we could like get a specific to-do by ID. We could add a to-do, we could delete a to-do, and we could update a to-do. And we also have a thing here. It's called get filter items, and I will show you what I'm going to do with that later. But first of all, let's create a new directory. HTTP examples. And let's also open up a new git bash window because I need to run our server locally. So since we're using a monorepo and I specified that the Angular CLI is the default CLI, I can still use the Angular CLI to run this application, even though our backend obviously isn't the Angular application. So here I can run ngserve examples API. Oh, I guess I have to actually go to our directory as well.
What is this API you added to the example?
So this is the backend. So right now,
Yeah, the name is
yeah. And let's try this using Postman. I'm guessing you all know what Postman is. Yeah. So, and so as you can see, our backend is working and we're getting the hard-coded array that I put up in the examples, this app service here. Oh, I can show you. So the endpoints that we have is just the API. We have ID that where we can put a param, and we could put an ID, delete ID, and then we have an endpoint that's called find by filter. We have an endpoint called always error, and then one that's called random error. And I will show. I have these two endpoints because I will show some error handling and some error handling strategies.
number you gave to this postman. Did you define it somewhere?
Yes, in our back. Let's see. Okay. So here we have our bootstrap for this backend, and here it just says 3003. But yeah, let's create. So I created a directory here, and let's also create a service. So as I mentioned in our first session, services is like your where you place all your HTTP requests. So let's create a new service, nggs, and let's place it in HTTP examples. So as you can tell, I have to specify for the components. I just write like this HTTP examples, and then it will create a folder for me. However, services don't have, like, they don't create an own folder around them. I'm not sure why they decided this. I thought it would be nice to have a folder.
They don't have any view, I guess, these services.
Yeah, I guess there's fewer files, so
Put the services in the folder where this service component, or do you have a separate like service folder?
so this is very different. I mean, so either you have a folder in your root for all your services, if you like, all the services are global, sure, or you have a service folder for a feature. So every feature module has its own services, because there are only services in that module, so it makes sense to be placed there. Or you could have, like, maybe you have a smart component and then you want a service for that smart component and it has a bunch of children below it, and you could place your service there as well. So there's no like correct answer here. Just as long as you have some kind of pattern and not like haphazardly place your services, you'll be fine. Now let's see, why didn't it create app? So it says that it created the HTTP examples, but there's nothing here.
But you are looking wrong. Now you are looking
No.
right.
That's, oh, maybe there was a simpler way to do that. Oh. Okay, here, HTTP examples. Alright, cool. And we have our service here. So, to use HTTP in Angular, we need to import the HTTP module. So, this file is getting a little unruly, but let's not look at that too much. So here we add HTTP client module from at so Angular isn't very like they haven't. I feel like their patterns aren't always the best. So like we have, when I showed you the forms module, then we had from @angular/forms. It makes a lot of sense, and I kind of wish that it was @angular/http, but here it's @angular/common/http. So I don't know how they decided, oh, this is a smart way to do this, but what? It is common.
If you stand under import and you just write what you want. No, under import instead. Under the import from
Here.
yeah, write HTTP. Then you will have no module. Just write it and press enter.
Yeah,
I will have everything.
I know. So
Maybe ng and HTTP. If you try ng,
I think you
if you try ng and then HTTP and dash HTTP.
I think you're missing something in the.
anyway, so this works.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's an extension.
Within this declaration are the components, but within the import are services
No, here we have our modules.
all modules.
So let's see if we can we? No. Okay. So it's pointing at our node modules where we have imported Angular, and here we get the HTTP module like bundle, like by importing it.
So all the libraries and everything.
Yeah. So all libraries that we install get placed in node modules, but all Angular, but we can't place them all here. Like, so not all packages we install have a module. Like, it's only like Angular specific things that have a module. But yeah, so we have our HTTP client module, and to use this, we would Let's close some stuff. I'm the king of having like unlimited tabs open, and you should see my browsers.
What is your record?
Like on the phone or on the phone. So you know in Chrome it says like you have like maybe up to 100. It shows a number. For me it just shows a smiley because there's so many tabs open. I think my record is 600 tabs on the phone.
How much memory you have?
I mean I don't look at them. I just
Use open a new some feed.
yeah I just open a new tab. Yeah.
But I'm the same. I also have.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah, this is just what you do. But like when I'm
600, but maybe.
when I'm programming, I have like 4 browsers, and they're all just filled with tabs, and I maybe look at one of them. But anyways, it's
As long as you yourself can keep track of that.
sure I can. Okay, so we have imported our HTTP client module, and then we can inject our HTTP service here, or HTTP client, like so. And basically what we want to do is just set up a function here. So let's say get all to dos, and get all to dos should return this.http.get. I'll explain in a second what we're doing here. So here we have /API, like so. So HTTP client, and like all of these will be observables. So here we're returning an observable for us to potentially subscribe to. So we're returning an observable of this endpoint of our backend. Here you can see I have only written /API, and that's because in my proxy config JSON I set up a proxy? No, like a alias type. So for localhost 3333. So commonly, if you haven't done it like this, you would need to write like const URL is equal to something like that, and then we write and /API. So here this is how you do string interpolation in TypeScript and JavaScript. I'm not sure how you do it in other languages, but here we could create a new string by using that. But since we have already set up our proxy config, we could pass only API, like so. But this in itself will not do anything. We could see that in our examples here. So let's do something like this engine init. Let's inject our service here. So we call I will want to use this later. So let's get our HTTP service and the example service, and on it we call this.http service.getAllToDos. So, and let's start our server.
Could you use this HTTP server directly instead of passing that to our service?
So the services can, since the service doesn't have any, like it doesn't have a life cycle, you can, there's only one way for you to call one easy way for you to call something, and that would be in the constructor you could call this.get all to dos. So then this would fire when like compiling happens, when like the file gets recognized, like or like when the class is constructed. But besides that, if you want to use the life cycles of components, which is generally when you want to call HTTP requests, then you have to inject the service. Okay, so my server started, and let's go to localhost. Let's clean that up as well. So in our app component we comment this out and we write app HTTP examples. Okay, so HTTP example works, but nothing happened. Like, even in our network, nothing happened. It doesn't say we haven't made the HTTP request. So what are we missing here? Well, you know this. Oh, nice. Okay, so in John init, so we returned an observable from our service, and here we called subscribe to get the value. And here we have an array of our items. Let's see where. So here is our request to the API as well, and this is how it looked like. So that would be like how you get the data from the service. But let's actually create some like a example of this. So in our HTTP examples, let's create a UL li div
Can we have it deep inside the list in lead?
yeah, yeah, no. Item of
But do you have to do async because it's just an HTTP request? You don't need async.
yeah, I do, because I haven't subscribed to it. So the async will subscribe. So I guess some people do it like this, and then you will return like the actual subscription. However, I don't condone this behavior, and you shouldn't do this. Like, you should always be in full control of like when you subscribe to your observables. So don't do that. So here we have async, and I'm not sure what is set up for our items. I think we have an item dot. Let's look at my backup.
So async is doing everything for you.
Yes.
Subscribe.
Yes. So, like, if you have a chance to use async, I would probably do it, because it will save you a lot of energy, like with cleanup, and you have a lot of power by using it in the template.
But can
Yes, we can.
How do you log it?
Something happened here. Oh, right. Okay, so don't do it exactly like this. What we let's do it like this. Um, well, why? I don't Okay. This should work. Okay. What was your question? Logging the data here. So no, so like
If you don't know the data, if you wanna
exactly. So you want to log the data here, and that you then you would do pipe, and then you would call tap, which is ArcGIS operator. So it's quite similar to map, but map
Spells with M.
exactly. No, but so map takes every emit and does something with the emit. Tap, you can call something with the latest emit, so you could have val, and then you could like call method with val. However, the next part of the stream would get the previous value. So I haven't shown you how. So the streams we have. Let's see, tap like so. No. So. Okay, so we can chain pipes. We can chain operators. So after a tap, we could use a map and get the val. If we had a map here, we would mutate the value that's passed through the stream to the next part of this stream. So if we did like map val times 2, so then this map would receive all the values times 2. However, if we do tap here, we cannot what is it? Left hand side okay, I'm not sure what it's complaining about. However, this will, you can do like a side effect of this stream, and but still have the same values emitted to the next part of the stream. Is this at all? Am I making any sense here? Enough sense. But so how we would console log a value when we use the async pipe is that we use pipe and then tap and call console log here. So the async pipe is in charge of the actual subscription, but we can still get the value, like we can handle the value in some way in our class, and we can you see here it says tap JS40, and here we get our values tapped. Is it clear at all? Ruben looks worried.
But it's like you're manipulating the stream before it reaches the.
If I use map, then I'm manipulating the stream.
Just taking out the values.
Exactly. Now I'm just tapping into the stream and getting the value, like the value submitted, but I don't do anything with them. I'm just like passing them through, but I want to see them.
Okay, so you can
But I can mutate them if I want.
console log them with a map.
Yes, definitely.
Just logging them, how are you mutating?
Obviously, like we're never mind. We can't console log them with a map. So or okay. So if we do map here, let's import this, add map, and I'm not sure if our shorthand will work here. Maybe this works. That's it. So here we got a 0 as well, which I'm not sure where the 0 comes from. But now we have broken our application as well, because we haven't passed through the values to the component. So what one would have to do if you want to use the map would be in here you write console, so we get the value out from the map, and then we write console log val, and then we return from the map val. So this will work, because now we're passing through the value to the next part of the stream. No, we're console logging it first, and then we're passing through. So, like what I did when I didn't have, let's save this. So
You don't have to subscribe.
let's do like this, and wait, don't do this. These are good as well. Okay, what was your question?
So you don't have to subscribe. You can do this, and you can put this in a variable instead, and then.
Yeah, exactly. So, I am subscribing, but the async pipe is handling the subscription. So the async pipe starts a subscription. Is that clear? Yeah.
So if you remove async, this won't work.
This will not work if I remove async. Let's check it out. Get all to-dos, and let's use our pipe, tap, and console log. Okay. And this is inval, this is service. So, okay. And so here we have our async, and if I remove async, so now we try to iterate over an observable, which will not work, and cannot find a differ supporting object of type object. Yeah, it's very, like, I know exactly what they're talking about. Right. But here it says ng4 only supports binding to iterables such as arrays, and the val here is not an array, it's an observable of an array, and then we, by using the async pipe, we have an actual array. We get the values from it.
So it takes out the array from the observable.
Yes.
But how do we say is an error on the request?
This will be the last part of this, and that's why I have two methods. So that's how you make an HTTP GET request from the backend. Questions about the HTTP GET? It's the simplest one. So then we'll add some extra, like some more problems. Let's now create a like a post. So let's see what I in my back.
Can you do post?
What?
Can you do a post here?
Yes, I can do a post because I set up a backend where I had a full CRUD. So let's see. I just don't remember what I called all the fields. So here we have my to-do interface. So this is what. Let's copy that. And here, let's just paste this here. Did I show you this? Where you could add optional parameters to an interface. I showed you interfaces, that I remember. But did I show you optional parameters? Basically, if let's say I have a to-do. To-do. And then I type it to-do. To-do. So now it expects me to have a description, a name, a completed, or a description and a name for this to do. And if I don't, this will be it will throw an error and say that name and description is required. However, so let's pass a name here and say cool to do, and then description. So now this is okay. Like we have typed this to be like completed an ID, but it has a name and description. But it could have a completed and it could have an ID. If I would to remove this question mark, then this will be broken because we require an ID. So that's all. That's kind of how these work. The reason why these are optional is because my backend will set the ID by itself. Like this is generally how you want. You don't want to pass an ID to your backend. You want your backend to set an ID for you. And completed. We'll look at it in a bit. Right now I've set up the backend to if there is not a completed, like if I haven't passed the completed, then it will automatically set the completed to false. But let's remove that, and in our HTTP example, let's create a form that has an input type text and name equal description, and we're using the ng model here as well because it's easiest. And let's the ng model and oh. Okay. And then in our component we set up name is equal to name and description. Okay, like so. And then let's add a button here. So this is more of a standard HTML. I try to sneak this in. So before we have had like a button and we just on click call a method, and this isn't like when you're working with forms, this isn't the way you should do it. You should have a button type submit, and this is, let's call it submit form, and then on the form, I think it's ng submit. It should be like this. Then we call a method here. Add to. We could try that. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now we write some stuff and we press enter. So no, I could press enter here because that would be the default behavior of a form. We press enter, that would be submit. If I had a button type button here, this will not work. So I write, nothing happens. So that's just some HTML stuff. This is how you should do. Obviously, like, we use the ng submit here, which is specific for Angular, but generally you would put something in actions, I guess. I haven't done vanilla JavaScript program, like web development, in quite some time. But here we have a submit, we have add to do. So now we want to post our body, like we want to post this data to the backend, and let's set up. Let's call this .http service and call post to backend, and it will take. So now you guys probably got tired of the two-way data binding because it's very wordy. Like, you need to set up a lot of templates. On Thursday I will show you how you would do this the correct way instead. And yeah. So in our HTTP service we want to pass we also want to pass this new to do. Okay, and let's set up a method to handle this. In our HTTP example service, let's create post to do. That's what I call it, right? No, post to backend. I need to get better at remembering this. And this takes to do with type to do. And so to post to backend, we here return an observable, this .http.post, and we have the same endpoint API, and but this isn't enough. We see here, this is something that VS Code is very good at. You can see like all the documentation kind of for the post. So here we have the URL string, that's okay, and then we need to pass a body, and here we just pass our to do. Let's hope this works, because I forgot to test this yesterday. And let's do and we press submit form. Let's see if a network request went away. It didn't. And why didn't it go away?
Subscribe.
Yes, subscribe. And so even though we're not expecting some like data to come back because we're posting, maybe it would be like this could error out obviously, and this could, you could also get some form of response back from the backend, like successfully added whatever, like, and that's why this also has a subscription. And let's try this again. Clean 04 after and we press submit, and then we have an API request, and this should be correct.
Shouldn't the other one be updated?
No, because so the thing here is we call this once on startup of this page, of this component, but we have but then it finished getting the data and it completed, and now we sent out a new request to the backend, and but we haven't started a new request to get the data.
But you can do
If I
subscribe. You can do subscribe again.
No, because so our HTTP, like, we already closed the connection to the backend, but if I refresh here, we have clean 04, because now we made a new GET request to our list of items.
Wouldn't be that a little bit inefficient? I mean, that would be nice if you click and just see this.
Yeah, but we don't have a, so then we would need like a live backend, or okay. So like there's do you know Firestore? Yeah. So Firestore is a live is it called live? I'm not sure. Like, so in Firestore you have like subscriptions to their you make API requests, and then they will update as you make new requests. But this is specific for like Firestore. But you could also build your backend to do something similar. I don't know how, and I haven't. We talked about this recently, and so Ruben probably will know very soon.
Where this new item is gone?
What?
The new item they created, does it go to, where is it kept, this
This.
one? Yeah.
So since we don't have a database, but like if I stop my server here, it will disappear.
Yes.
But as long as the server is running, then we keep the data in our service. Like,
Can you write it?
yes, but let's not do that.
If you would write that like JSON in some file, and that,
Yes, but why would we want that?
if you want to keep the state of the,
But like,
it's more like a database.
yeah, but I don't know. This works. Any questions about the post? We could also see that here, clean 04, it created an ID for me. It's yeah, we got a standard ID. I see that the completed did not get created, which is, yeah. All right. So the next part would be to, yeah, we could delete. Let's delete. So delete item by ID. Here we would need to take an ID as a string, and then we would return this dot http dot delete API, and here we would need to pass our ID. So wait, sorry. like so. And then, so here the ID is param for the backend, and in our examples component we add a new method, delete to do, which takes the ID and calls this dot http service dot delete item by ID with the ID. And then let's add in here, let's add a span. So this should be a button, but I'm not gonna take time and style it. Okay, let's add a button. We can use click on it, but it'll get a little, it could get a little sad. Did I call this delete to do? I did. Oh. And then we pass our, so the items here is the object, because you see we have item.name, and here we would call it with item ID, and let's write delete. Okay, so here's a part where, so right now we don't have a state of our service. The correct way would be that we had, like, to handle like the adding and deleting, so it would happen immediately in our service, would be that we, at the same time as we do the requests to the backend, we also have like an internal array here, like items, that when it started it gets set to the first value here, get all to dos, and then when we so here we would have like a subject, and then here we would call like this dot items next, and then this items dot value, and then like our new to do here. So then we would add it to our own array, and then we would also save it to the backend. So then we get the immediate response for the user in the user interface. It would take too much time to set this up, and I realize I gotta speed up a little bit. So now when we press delete here, nothing. Oh, right, sorry. Not subscribe. We press delete here. Okay. Strange. Let's see if this worked. So this is my backend skills, not fully, it's not there really. I'm not sure why I got an HTTP request, because it like HTTP error, because it said it was okay and it did delete item. So I'm not sure why it threw an error. So that would be how you delete an item with the ID. Let's so a put would be basically you combine these two. So I will not show an example, but I will have I won't do it with the like with the homepage, but I'll create a method, put item. So let's get the ID here. So here I would hardcode something. Return this dot http dot put, and we point it to slash API. What? And here we would also need to pass a body, so const new item to this dot and in our HTTP component we'll call it put so yeah, I'm just hard coding this to save some time. Click. So now if I press update here and refresh,
Why don't you do the same in the
oh my bad. Why don't I do the same?
as in delete?
Because then I would have to get an ID here and then like to the form, and then I would need to fill this form with some values, and like it takes too much time. Of course this is how we should do it, like how we should do the same thing as in delete, but to save some time, so we why did I call it? So you see it updated, and so that's the like full CRUD of an application. Like, so you should just like know how the post, put, get, and delete works. You need to post, but the logic behind what happens is then the backend's like job. And yeah, let's see what we have left here. So to most backends, like you need to pass some kind of headers, and also like some. I mentioned very quickly like query params. Maybe you want to filter the data you get from a backend, and you can do that with query params. I'm just gonna show you how you would add headers and query params to a request. So here we'll create headers, new HTTP headers, and then here we set like off, and then wait, off, and that would be like some token. And then to your API request you would add. So now you see we have options, and then we could add headers, and those will be our header, like so. Similar with params, so const param, let's call this query. So I think this should work, but I might be wrong. Yeah, I'm wrong. So here Angular made some strange choices as well. So these two are very similar, headers and params. However, for the query params, we need to call it like this: set, and then we write like key and value. Why? I don't know. But yeah, it's very strange. This is way more readable, in my opinion.
I think maybe it's if you have many query params, then it's a long line or something.
Yeah, but like so here you could have your like const my headers is equal to, and then you could add like all your things like so, and then you could just pass your my headers here, which would have been nice. But
So what is query params? You set the key and value.
exactly, and then here you would pass params, query params. So then this object of HTTP params have now a key and value pair. So here maybe we could have movie is equal to the ring.
So you added a value to the.
Yeah, so now I set the query param to I set a key value pair in the query params.
Instead of
Show how it looks.
How the
When you just load the page, you can look at how the
maybe, yeah, you are right. Examples fresh. So here's our request to our API, and in our headers here we set off some token, and but our query params don't show here. I'm not sure how to show them, but
but if you can filter, just tell them about
yeah, but that's so my endpoints that I have is let's see, we have random error, always error. Oh, here we actually have a query param. I will show you how to do this, but after error handling. Woohoo! Yay! So let's go back to our presentation. Error handling. Yes, if the HTTP request fails, the backend will throw an error. This isn't always true, but it should. If the guy that wrote the backend did us any favors, and we like in the front end we should handle all errors. We shouldn't just let the we should notify the user in some way. Oh, your request failed, like so you get some kind of visual representation of what happened. And a couple of ways to handle, or these are the ways to handle errors in Angular, at least, or in ArcGIS would be. So we have catch and replace, catch and rethrow, and retry. I will only show catch and replace and retry because rethrow, I don't, we need like a chain of observables, and we don't have time to go through that, and I feel like you won't really get that much out of it. But catch and replace we can look at. So in our code, in our HTTP examples, in our service, let's get a method. I will error. Return this HTTP dot get slash API slash app always error. I don't know why it does this. Always error. Okay. And in our component on init, let's call this dot HTTP service dot I will error subscribe and console. Okay, so here. Okay. Try that one more time. Oh.
Det finns väl inga att...
No, this I did try yesterday. What the hell?
Men den är noll.
Vadå?
Den är noll. Det finns väl inte...
Men nej, men den returnerar ingenting. Men den ska throw new error.
Jaha, okej.
Okay, let's do it like this instead. So if we can get the same result if we do like this. So now we will get a 404 because there's no URL call AP.
Missing I.
Yeah, that's exactly. So here we get a 404 not found, and we want to so this will be the catch and replace method. So if in our HTTP examples component here we call dot pipe catch error, and here we will get an error, and I don't want to do anything with this error. So what I say here is, if we get an error, I want to return something else here. So return of I error. And I need to add another parenthesis. So oh, my bad. HTTP service I will error. Okay. Okay, so now we didn't get the like uncaught exception. We get the get fail. This is just normal from the browser, but we also, instead of getting an error here, we got I errored out. So now we replace the error with something new. So we could like maybe here call a method that pops up an alert like your HTTP request could not blah blah, and then you could pass in the error code. So then you would have caught the error and handled it in some way. So to try my retry method, I kind of needed it, like my backend to work correctly. So let's try random error. So here we have a like a math thing. So 50-50 it will error, and we want to retry it so many times, like until it stops erroring out. And but since this one didn't work, I'm scared that this one won't work either. I might error, and then we return this dot http dot get API slash random. Oh. No, it should be random. Okay. And then in our HTTP component, let's comment this one out and call this dot HTTP service dot I might error dot subscribe. Okay. I think this probably won't work. Okay. So my backend skills fail me. But let's copy this line and comment this one out. And instead of calling catch error here, we can call retry.
Can you just catch the error and subscribe instead?
How would I do that? Like,
If response
but then it had.
also worked else.
But then I didn't. Then the error has happened, and then so in the subscribe, sure, I could do like this. So here, I didn't show you this because this is for like a need to know basis. So here we have next error and then complete. So the first method of the subscribe is what we have called so far. It will always be next. But we can add another method here. So here we would get the error, and in the last part we will get the complete. Do you understand? Yeah. As I said, I didn't want to show this because it would, like, there's no real point for you to know this right now. This is what you should focus on, like the subscribe and getting the new emits. But here we have retry 5. So I will error it will always break, and we will just try to. You see, now we pulled this backend. So here we couldn't get it, retry it, couldn't get it, couldn't get it, couldn't get it, and like it tries 5 more times, and then it gives up. And in my retry random error, eventually would have actually been a success. So that's a use case for retry.
But you have like a catch and retry after 5 times. You have a lab.
Yeah, exactly. So you would. So here you have retry 5 times, and then you would catch error, and then you could do something. So you could combine these. Okay. So I had an example of more like a real world application of this, but maybe did you have some questions? Like, I'm guessing there's some questions. Oh. Okay. Do you want to see the example of how you could use RxJS in a real world thing? I have a type ahead component I could do. Yes? Yep, okay. Awesome. Let's do something like this. So we have an input field, and let's put a local variable input. And then you remember we used view child, right? In the first session. So here we could get a reference to our input field that we have here. And then let's do so RxJS has a method called from event, and here we have our input dot native element, and the event we want to listen for is key up, and here we pipe this. So now we will get a stream of all the key up events.
You're writing a key like
What?
application.
Yeah. So I have this in my backend. I have the get type ahead. So I will write with my stream of events. I will do HTTP requests and get a list. So I mean, just like this example is maybe a bit overkill for what we're doing, but it works. So let's see here. Didn't I do this here? Wait, what file was it?
Yeah, there.
Here. Okay, wrong file. So this is the file where we want to do this, because this is where we actually have an input, and then on init, let's call this from event pipe, and here we would do something like this. First, let's see if we could get first we want to get values, so let's see if we could do that. So we have a pipe, and let's call map, and here we have val, and want to. So in this case I will use the map in a second, so don't shoot me because I'm using a map here. And let's see here, at view child I need to import view child. Okay, and let's comment out some templates here. Can't read properly native element if undefined, because so now we talked about life cycles, and what I did wrong here was I put this in ng on init, but this is not defined on init, it's defined after view init, and instead we will call this ng after view init and call from event here. So now let's comment out these errors as well. because they will be annoying. Okay. Yes. So this didn't work. I hate it when stuff don't work, and so it's not working because I haven't subscribed to it.
So from event is also
So yes, we're creating an observable from the events of this input field. So this would be, I guess, a little. So if we're using reactive forms, we wouldn't need to use from event, because then we would have like value changes of the reactive form. But here, since we're not using reactive forms yet, we would need to do something like this. So now we can see that we get a key code, and we get the target of the event, and we get the value here of the input. Is that clear? Yes. So here we would need to let's call this event instead. So const target is equal to e dot target as input and event here is event. Okay, and what we want to pass along to the next part would be the value. Return target dot value. So now when we write, we will get hello. Ah, smart. Sorry, I'm trying to do this fast. So now we get the value of the input field. And so the next part, what we want to do now is we want to, in our service, set up a get list. So, and we return hp.get hpi find by filter, and so here I'm using a query param, so I need to set up our params. Const query is equal to new http params, and then for some reason I need to write query.set, and here I name my param search. Set search, and it will be search, like so. Sorry, like so. And then here in our options we pass params query. Okay, you're with me so far? Okay. Here's when it might get a little confusing. So now what we want to do is we want to call something called switch map. So we have a hot stream of events, and we want to. So we have one observable, and we want to switch to a new observable. Are you with me? So here we get the value. This is the target.value. Okay, and here we want to return this dot HTTP service dot get list with value. Are you with me? No. So if we did this correctly, when I write here, we should not get null.
So this is how you get around.
I don't know why. So this.
Ska göra det?
Let's see what happens in this. I feel like this might be my backend problems as well. No. Find by filter cancelled.
Is there any query parameters?
Yeah, so I'm passing the query param. It's very problematic when you're doing something yesterday and it works fine, and then you're gonna show it, and then you look like an idiot. Okay, so we have. I'm not sure why this is not working.
But you return the value before. No. Sorry.
No, here I'm trying to return the new observable. So, like, this part works, that we're sure of, the event part. So let's see if we could this dot HTTP service dot get list, and let's call this with nothing, and of course subscribe and console.log. We get null. So there's some problem with the backend again, because now my query is it didn't log it. So let's go to Postman. So I mean, stuff will happen whilst developing. And this will be find by filter. So in Postman, find by filter, and my params is search, and my value is nothing. And if I send this, I get nothing. Makes sense. Get filter items, return this dot item. You see, query this dot items. So this should return this item, like these items, but it's not doing it for some reason.
If you run
So yeah, this awesome type ahead might come to a small halt. I can show it to you next time, I guess. Thank you. Questions? Do you want me to... What? Well, because I'm a terrible backend developer. But, yeah, I'm not sure.
In the access 3, we need to create our backend ourselves.
No, I have made a backend for you. But I also tested this backend as in the same way that I tested this backend, and to get the backend to run, you need to write ng-serve expenses API. I think I added it in the exercise here. Google Docs. That's Google Maps. I hope you understood some of RxJS, and like I get that this might be very intimidating, but I think as long as your backends work, this should be all fine.
Is there any deadline for finish the access?
So I'm not sure what Jonas wants, but there will be a like diploma for this course, and I mean, I would like if you did the exercises before the course finishes. That said, I mean I have no way of really checking if you've done it.
I think we just put our hands up.
Yeah, so I mean, if it's up to you, like, as I said, if you're not doing the exercises, you will not learn anything. So then you're just wasting your time. So, but I wouldn't say that there's a deadline to finish the exercises. I'll send you the super cool code for the type ahead later.